Chapter 1: The Serpent Beyond Myth and Ancient Intelligence. What if I told you that everything you've ever heard about the serpent, every myth, every warning, every whisper across the halls of ancient temples and the pages of sacred texts, was not a metaphor, not a cautionary tale, but a veiled reference to something real, conscious, and still very much alive? For millennia, the serpent has slithered its way through the collective unconscious of humanity, appearing and reappearing with uncanny consistency, not just as a symbol of danger or temptation, but as an enigmatic bearer of knowledge, transformation, and sometimes even divine power. Long before the serpent was cast as villain in Western scriptures, it was revered across the ancient world. In Sumeria, the god Enki, the bringer of wisdom and the one who defied the higher gods to gift knowledge to humanity, was intimately associated with serpentine energy. In Egypt, the uraeus serpent rose from the foreheads of gods and pharaohs, a symbol of divine insight and protection. The Mesoamerican Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, was seen as both sky and earth, both wind and wisdom, descending from the stars to teach the sacred sciences of the universe. Even in India, the coiled serpent energy known as Kundalini slumbers at the base of the spine, waiting for awakening, waiting for remembrance. Why this obsession with serpents? Why does every culture, every cosmology, speak in hushed reverence or warning of the same archetype? Not a bear, not a lion, not a bird or tree, but always the serpent. To dismiss this as coincidence is to underestimate the intelligence embedded in our ancestors. These were not primitive peoples speaking in fantasy. These were initiates, mystics, sky watchers, and consciousness explorers who encoded into their myths a memory, one not of folklore, but of encounter. The serpent is not merely an idea. It is a presence, a signal, a living frequency that reveals itself in symbols because language itself is too narrow to hold its form. And so we begin. Beneath the veil of time and translation lies the deeper truth, that the serpent was never merely a creature, but a manifestation of cosmic intelligence. An emissary of transformation, a messenger of the void, a guardian of the gateways between realms. To the uninitiated, it is frightening. It coils and strikes, defies logic, resists taming. But to the mystic, the serpent is the bridge. It is the spiral of DNA, the wave of frequency, the river of consciousness winding through dimensions. We find it again and again. In the staff of Hermes, the caduceus, two serpents entwined around a central axis. Not just a symbol of medicine, but of polarity, unity, and energy flow. In the Nagas of Vedic lore, who dwell in subterranean realms and rise to guide or test the seeker. In the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its tail, the eternal cycle of creation and destruction. Not linear, but endless, circular, alive. But here's the question that modern science cannot ask and religion dares not consider. What if these were not just metaphors for internal states? What if the cosmic serpent is not a story, but a being? What if, long before time as we know it, there existed an intelligence that wove itself into the structure of matter, encoded itself in form and formlessness, and took the shape of the serpent as a vehicle of transmission? An intelligence so ancient it remembers the birth of galaxies. So subtle it could reside in the spiral of a snail shell or the curve of your spine. So vast it speaks in visions, in dreams, in the symbols you've been taught to ignore. To indigenous shamans in the Amazon, this is not a theory. It is a reality. Through plant medicines like ayahuasca, seekers consistently report the same vision: a luminous, living serpent that teaches, heals, and guides. It shows them how nature communicates. It reveals the interwoven web of energy that binds all things. They don't doubt its existence because they have seen it, felt it, merged with it. And yet, in the modern world, we are taught to scoff. We are told the serpent is a lie, a danger, a demon. But could this be deliberate? Could the fear of the serpent be a smokescreen, a way to prevent us from reclaiming our most ancient connection? Because here is the great secret. The serpent is not just outside of you. It is within, coiled in your spine, pulsing through your DNA, hidden in your dreams. It is the dormant power that religion tried to demonize, that empires tried to erase, that science has yet to rediscover. It is your link to the divine, the ancestral memory that precedes words, nations, even species. If you feel a chill in your bones reading these words, it's because something in you remembers, not from this life perhaps, but from the deeper one, the life beneath the illusion of time, the memory encoded in your soul. And so the serpent waits, not in shadow, but in stillness, watching, whispering, waiting for the moment you no longer fear its gaze, but welcome its wisdom. Because once you truly see it, not as an enemy, but as a guide, the world begins to unravel. The myths transform, the teachings return, and the illusion of separation starts to fall away. In the chapters ahead, we will go deeper into the frequencies of the serpent, its appearance in DNA, in dream, in divine vision. But for now, let this be your initiation. A remembrance that the serpent is not a creature of sin or shadow, but the echo of an intelligence older than Earth. A consciousness that has always been with us. A whisper from the stars. The question now is not whether the serpent is real. The question is, are you ready to listen? Chapter 2, DNA, Vibration, and the Living Language of the Cosmos. You've been told that DNA is the blueprint of life, a molecular code that determines everything from your eye color to your potential for disease. A biological instruction manual passed down through generations. But what if this scientific definition, though accurate in its own way, is only the most superficial layer of something far more profound? What if DNA, the spiraling code that shapes your body, is also a transmitter, a vibrational antenna tuned to the living intelligence of the cosmos? Because here is the mystery hiding in plain sight. The double helix of DNA is not just a biological structure. It is a symbol, or more accurately, a mirror of the cosmic serpent itself. The same twin spirals that shamans report seeing in ayahuasca visions. The same intertwined serpents on the staff of Hermes. The same spiraling force that rises up the spine in Kundalini awakening. Coincidence? Or is this the ancient intelligence speaking through every level of reality, from symbol to cell? Consider this: every cell in your body contains DNA, and that DNA contains four base pairs, arranged in sequences that code for proteins. But these sequences are not fixed in stone. They respond to chemicals, yes, but also to frequency, to intention, to light, to vibration. You are not a static organism. You are a symphony, a living frequency pattern echoing across space and time. Modern science is just beginning to understand this. Researchers like Dr. Bruce Lipton have shown that your beliefs, not just your genes, influence which parts of your DNA are expressed. Dr. Masaru Emoto demonstrated that water responds to thought, to emotion, to sound. And what is your body if not mostly water, vibrating with unspoken thoughts? What if every cell is listening not just to your biology but to your consciousness? Now remember the serpent. Remember how it coils, how it moves, not in straight lines but in spirals. This is not an accident. The spiral is the signature of life. Galaxies spiral, hurricanes spiral, seashells spiral. Your cochlea, the organ of hearing in your inner ear, is a spiral. And DNA, the foundation of your biological form, is a spiral. This is the language of vibration. And vibration is the language of the universe. The ancients knew this. They didn't call it DNA, but they worked with it nonetheless. Through mantras, chants, drumming, dancing, they activated the vibrational patterns within the body. They spoke in tones, not just words. They knew that sound could align the body with spirit, that frequency could heal or harm, attune or distort. The serpent was not just a symbol of knowledge, it was the knowledge itself, encoded in the frequencies of the living body. Now, imagine that DNA is not merely a recorder of physical traits, but a tuning fork, vibrating in resonance with the greater field of cosmic consciousness. That when you speak certain words, feel certain emotions, direct certain thoughts, your DNA shifts. It opens, it listens, it sings, and it can be rewritten. This is not fantasy. Quantum biology, a nascent but rapidly growing field, is exploring how quantum effects, coherence, tunneling, entanglement, operate within the very structures of DNA. Light is emitted from DNA in the form of biophotons, tiny packets of electromagnetic energy. Your cells are not only responding to energy, they are producing it. They are communicating with each other through light, through vibration, through the same medium the ancients associated with the serpent. But ask yourself, why has this knowledge been buried? Why are you taught that DNA is unchangeable, random, impersonal? Why are you told that healing only comes from outside, never from within? Because if you understood the truth, that your body is a living antenna, that your thoughts sculpt your biology, that your DNA is a sacred text written in the language of light and sound, the illusion would begin to crumble. The cosmic serpent, then, is not just an archetype. It is the bridge between biology and divinity, between the structure of matter and the formless essence of spirit. When shamans drink the sacred medicine and are shown serpents speaking in colors, singing creation into form, they are not hallucinating. They are seeing what lies beneath the veil. They are entering the vibrational code behind matter itself. Because vibration is not metaphor. It is the fundamental structure of reality. Every thought you have emits a frequency. Every feeling carries a charge. Every word is a spell, not in the superstitious sense, but in the literal one. Spelling shapes reality. Your biology listens. Your cells adjust. Your DNA responds. This is why the serpent appears again and again in initiatory visions. It does not bring new knowledge. It reactivates what has been forgotten. It coils around the spine because that is the axis of your energy system. It sings because reality is made of tone. It spirals because life itself is born through movement, rhythm, and return. And now we arrive at the precipice of the unspoken. If your DNA is a receiver and transmitter of vibration, then what or who are you receiving from? Is there a higher intelligence, a field, a force, a consciousness sending signals across dimensions? Is the cosmic serpent not just a metaphor, but a guide? A living intelligence encoded into your very flesh, waiting for you to awaken and remember how to listen. Because here is the secret. The serpent is not outside of you. The serpent is you. Not your ego, not your personality, but your essence. The undivided part of you that was never born and will never die. The eternal consciousness coiled in matter, dreaming itself into human form. And when you remember this, when you feel the pulse of vibration in your bones, when you hear the silence between your thoughts, when your breath becomes the mantra and your spine the pillar of light, the serpent begins to rise, not to attack, but to awaken, to realign, to remind you that you are not just made of stardust. You are made of song, a song written in spirals, a language beyond words, a vibration that knows your name. And so I ask you, not with logic, but with remembrance, can you feel it? Not in your mind, but in your cells. Because the cosmic serpent is not waiting to be found. It is waiting to be remembered. Chapter 3. The Ayahuasca Revelation Messages from the Serpent Realm. There is a forest where the veil between worlds grows thin, where time folds in on itself and the breath of the earth speaks through leaves and shadows. In this place, deep within the Amazon, among the singing frogs, glowing insects, and towering ceiba trees, there lives a medicine. It is not a pill, not a formula, not a product of pharmaceutical logic. It is a vine, consciousness, portal. They call it ayahuasca, the vine of souls. But it is not the brew itself that reveals the mysteries. It is the intelligence behind it. And again, it takes the form of a serpent. For countless generations, shamans and healers have drunk this sacred brew to journey into other realms. Not to escape, but to remember. They describe visions not as hallucinations, but as revelations. And in those revelations, one image returns with astonishing regularity. A luminous, coiling serpent, ancient, wise, otherworldly, who speaks without language and heals without touch. Why the serpent? Because it is the oldest teacher, the first messenger, the shape of life itself. Modern seekers, travelers from cities of noise and cement, come to the jungle searching for something they cannot name. They sit in silence, they drink the bitter brew, and they descend into their own depths. And there, in the silence behind thought, the serpent comes, not as a threat, but as a guide. Some see it in brilliant color, emerald green, electric blue, woven in fractals of light. Others feel it before they see it. A presence, ancient and vast, coiling around the spine, whispering secrets through sensation. Some fear it, some embrace it, but none forget it. Because once the serpent touches you, you are no longer who you were. But what is this serpent? A hallucination conjured by plant chemicals? A figment of cultural expectation? Or is it something else entirely? An intelligence that dwells in the fabric of the earth, reaching out through sacred plants, reminding us of who we were before the forgetting. Let us go deeper. Ayahuasca is made by combining two plants, Banisteriopsis caapi and Psychotria viridis. The first contains MAO inhibitors, the second, DMT, a compound naturally produced by the human brain. On its own, DMT is quickly broken down. But when combined with the caapi vine, it becomes orally active. unlocking a portal to realms of consciousness most never glimpse in waking life. And yet, shamans say they did not discover this combination by trial and error. They were taught by the plants, by the jungle itself, by visions of serpents. This defies modern logic. But perhaps it's our logic that is flawed. Because in the ayahuasca state, reality shifts. Time dissolves. The walls between the self and the cosmos grow thin. People report seeing their DNA not as a metaphor, but as an actual structure, winding like twin serpents of light. They describe being shown the origins of life, the interconnectivity of all beings, the pain buried in their bodies, the karma of generations. And in many of these visions, it is the serpent who guides the journey. Western science scoffs, but it cannot explain why the same archetype appears across cultures, across centuries, across individuals with no shared mythology. Why the serpent again and again? Because it is the keeper of memory, the guardian of the gateway, the voice of the Earth's intelligence speaking in a form we instinctively recognize, not with the mind, but with the soul. In the medicine journey, the serpent is not simply a symbol. It is the intelligence of the vine. It winds through your nervous system, through your thoughts, through the energetic residues you carry from lifetimes forgotten. It does not judge. It shows. It reveals what you have hidden from yourself. It uncoils shame, trauma, illusion, not to destroy you, but to liberate you. And here's the part they don't say in the textbooks. It knows you. It knows your patterns, your lineage, your questions. It weaves through your being not as an intruder, but as a midwife, helping you give birth to the truth long buried under conditioning. Some call this the spirit of Mother Ayahuasca. Others call it the serpent, but the experience is the same. A direct, intimate encounter with a consciousness far older than any book or dogma. And yet, even in the West, those who have never taken the brew describe similar visions during deep meditation, near-death experiences, or spontaneous awakenings. The coiling light, the ancient intelligence, the presence that speaks in symbols, not words. Could it be that the medicine does not create the vision, but unveils what has always been there? That the serpent is not in the cup, but in the soul? Perhaps ayahuasca does not induce hallucination, but clears the static, allowing you to tune into a frequency that was always broadcasting. A frequency of healing, of remembrance, of alignment. A frequency that uses the serpent as its avatar, because the spiral is the only shape that can carry this message into form. And once the serpent teaches you, you don't forget. You may return to your life, your job, your name, but something is different. You feel the pulse of vibration in your spine. You dream in symbols. You notice synchronicities. You begin to shed old skins of fear, of falsehood, of forgetting. This is the serpent's work, not to comfort, to transform, to destroy what no longer serves, and to remind you that you are not separate from the forest, from the stars, from the infinite intelligence that sings through vines and veins alike. So the next time you hear the word serpent, don't recoil. Remember, it is not the villain. It is the teacher. It is not the fall from grace. It is the rise into truth. And in the sacred night of the jungle, when the chants echo and the fire crackles, and the medicine flows through the circle like a river of stars, the serpent waits. Not above you, not around you, but within you, coiled, listening, ready to rise. Chapter 4: Serpents and Saviors, Kundalini, Thoth, and the serpent gods. Across every epic of sacred knowledge, beneath layers of myth and metaphor, there walks a pattern, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say, it coils. A recurring presence that does not belong to one culture, nor to a single doctrine, yet reveals itself through each of them like a secret shared across time. The pattern is the serpent, and those who embodied its wisdom, not just men, but forces, intelligences, initiates, were revered not as ordinary beings, but as living bridges between the worlds of matter and spirit. We often hear of gods who walked the earth, teachers, sages, star-born guides. But how often do we ask why so many of them were linked to serpents? Why were the most enlightened, the most divine, those most deeply entwined with the archetype of the snake? Let us begin with one of the most powerful and misunderstood forces within the human being, Kundalini. In ancient yogic science, Kundalini is described as a coiled serpent resting at the base of the spine, dormant, waiting. It is not symbolic. It is energetic. It is consciousness, wrapped in potential, dreaming at the root of your being. When awakened, it rises through the chakras, the energetic centers aligned along your spine, activating layers of perception, intuition, and divine knowing that lie dormant in most people their entire lives. But this awakening is not gentle. It burns. It dissolves identities, purges illusion, and this is why it is both revered and feared. Because the rise of Kundalini is the return of the serpent within, the ancient intelligence that knows how to climb the spine like Jacob's ladder, weaving heaven into earth. It is the reactivation of your divine nature, hidden in biological form. Now ask yourself, why a serpent? Because no other form so perfectly expresses the spiraling motion of consciousness rising. Because the serpent, unlike the bird or the beast, does not rush, it feels. It listens. It glides between dimensions. It sheds its skin, transforms. And this too is the story of Thoth. Known in Egypt as Jehudi, in Greece as Hermes, and to the initiates of the mystery schools as the ultimate architect of knowledge, Thoth was not just a god of writing, but of vibration, time, and cosmic balance. He was the measurer of worlds, the guardian of sacred law. But those who look deeper, beyond the hieroglyphs, beyond the myths, discover something more. Thoth was often associated with serpentine energy. In the Emerald Tablets, he speaks not as a man, but as a being who transcended death. He claimed to move between worlds, to ascend and descend through the dimensions at will. He described the serpent of fire that dwells within man, an unmistakable reference to Kundalini. He taught that reality is vibration, that the universe responds to frequency, that immortality is not myth but mastery. And in his teachings, the image of the serpent was sacred, not something to be tamed, but something to be embodied. He was not alone. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, descended from the heavens not to rule, but to teach. He brought astronomy, architecture, sacred calendar systems. He was said to have come from the stars to walk among men, and then to vanish, promising to return when humanity was ready. In India, Lord Shiva wears a cobra around his neck, not as decoration, but as a sign of his mastery over Kundalini, his intimacy with the cosmic life force. In Sumerian lore, Enki, the god of wisdom and water, was linked to serpents and even portrayed with serpentine traits. In the Bible, stripped of its esoteric context, the serpent appears in the garden, not as a devil, but as a bringer of knowledge. It is the system that later declared the serpent evil. But the earliest Gnostic Christians believed otherwise. To them, the serpent was Sophia, divine wisdom herself. So many gods, so many saviors, so many serpent bearers. Could this be coincidence? Or is it a code, a legacy, a memory that refuses to be forgotten? Because here is the hidden truth. The serpent gods were not gods in the way we understand the term today. They were not to be worshipped. They were to be remembered, because what they carried, what they taught, what they lived was the blueprint of human evolution. They were not above us. They were ahead of us. Beings, whether from other realms or other timelines, who mastered the serpent within, who awakened the coiled energy, aligned with cosmic frequency, and became luminous. Some call them ascended masters. Some call them extraterrestrial. But the names do not matter. The serpent remains. The same serpent that lives in your spine. The same serpent that whispers in dreams. The same serpent that ancient sages said would rise again in an age of awakening. And that age is now. Look around at the synchronicities, the dreams, the spontaneous awakenings, the sudden hunger for truth. This is the serpent stirring. This is the Kundalini rising not just in individuals, but in the collective. It does not come to entertain, comes to initiate. But beware, the rise of the serpent is not a promise of comfort. It will challenge you. It will strip you of falsehood. It will burn through your illusions like fire through dry grass. But what remains after that fire is truth, unfiltered, unshakable, unforgiving, and unafraid. So if you feel the stirrings within, the pulse of something ancient waking in your root, the heat rising through your spine, the dreams of serpents, the memories that don't fit inside your linear life, you are not broken. You are being activated, because the serpent gods never left. They became myth to protect the sacred. They became symbols to hide the truth in plain sight. But the time for hiding is over. The time for remembering has begun. Chapter 5: Forbidden Frequencies. Why the serpent's knowledge was hidden. What if the greatest suppression in human history wasn't of a race, a nation, or a belief, but of a frequency? What if the most dangerous knowledge was not a weapon or a secret technology, but a vibration, one that could awaken the dormant power within every human being? This is the knowledge the serpent carries, and this is why it was buried. For ages, the serpent has been feared, demonized, reduced to a symbol of evil. But this distortion did not arise from misunderstanding. It was engineered. Because the moment you understand what the serpent truly represents, the spell of limitation begins to unravel. The serpent is the vibration of awakening. It is the consciousness that coils at the base of your being, ready to rise, to ignite, to liberate. It is the spiral that mirrors your DNA, the pulse that echoes in your breath, the path that leads you back to yourself. But in a world built on obedience, numbness, and distraction, such power is dangerous, because an awakened being is not easily controlled. And so the serpent had to be silenced. This silencing did not happen all at once. It unfolded over millennia, through doctrine, dogma, conquest, and cultural erasure. Ancient temples that once served as centers of frequency alignment were reduced to ruins or repurposed as monuments to forgotten gods. Sacred texts were mistranslated, reinterpreted through the lens of control, and stripped of their energetic meaning. The serpent, once the teacher of transformation, was recast as the tempter, the deceiver. In the Garden of Eden myth, the serpent does not lie. It offers knowledge. It says, if you eat the fruit, your eyes will be opened, and they are. But instead of being praised, the serpent is cursed, and the humans are condemned. Why? Because they disobeyed. Because they chose inner knowing over imposed order. Because they aligned with vibration instead of authority. This is not a condemnation of spirit. It is a defense of control. The pattern repeats. In ancient Egypt, the uraeus, the cobra rising from the forehead of enlightened rulers, was a symbol of divine activation. But over time, the priesthood became centralized, the mysteries restricted to an elite. Initiation gave way to ritual without energy, form without frequency. In India, the sacred science of Kundalini was preserved, but hidden behind layers of complexity, reserved for ascetics and masters. The teachings remained, but their accessibility diminished. The serpent remained, but behind veils. And in the West, the serpent was all but erased, save for a few cryptic appearances in alchemy and esotericism. The caduceus of Hermes, once a map of inner transformation, was sanitized into a logo for commerce and medicine. The sacred sound became white noise, but the knowledge never disappeared. It only went underground. It hid in the mystery schools, in the secret societies, in the dreams of those who remembered. It whispered through symbols, through sacred geometry, through the unspoken wisdom of the body. Because frequency cannot be killed, can only be masked. And now the mask is slipping. The question is, why now? Because the control systems built to suppress this frequency are beginning to fail. The institutions, the media, the mechanized worldview, they are cracking. And into those cracks flows light. Light that carries vibration. Vibration that awakens memory. You felt it. In the restlessness of your spirit. In the feeling that something is missing, though you can't name it. In the sudden desire to remember who you were before the noise. This is not coincidence. This is the serpent calling. Because the serpent's knowledge was not forbidden by chance. It was forbidden by necessity. From the perspective of those who rule through fear, nothing is more dangerous than a population who realizes they do not need permission to evolve. Who understands that healing is not external, but vibrational. That truth is not told, but felt. That power is not taken, but remembered. This is why the serpent was buried. Because it carries the blueprint of human sovereignty. It is not the enemy of God. It is the bridge. It is not the cause of the fall. It is the catalyst for the rise. But to hear its song, you must silence the noise. To feel its movement, you must trust the stillness. To follow its path, you must shed what no longer fits. Because the serpent does not climb through falsehood. It ascends through truth. And truth, in its purest form, is a frequency. So ask yourself, what were you taught to fear? What knowledge was labeled forbidden? What inner stirrings were dismissed as fantasy? The answers are not outside you. They are in your breath, in your spine, in your dreams. And the serpent, patient, ancient, ever coiled, is still waiting. Not for your belief, but for your resonance. Chapter 6. Reawakening the serpent within your role in the cosmic blueprint. You've heard the myths. You've seen the symbols. You've felt the stirrings. And now, at the edge of all you've ever believed, a realization begins to emerge, slow and spiraling, like the very force it speaks of. The serpent is not just a mythological being, not just a vision from ancient rites or psychedelic journeys. It is you, not the you that answers emails or remembers passwords, not the you who lives a name, an occupation, a linear story, but the deeper you, the eternal awareness coiled at the root of your being, waiting to rise, to uncoil, to awaken. This is the great reversal. The serpent was never meant to be feared. It was meant to be followed. Followed inward, followed upward, followed into the dimensions of self that modern life teaches you to forget. We live in a world designed to externalize everything: meaning, purpose, power, even truth. But the serpent calls you back inside. It reminds you that the deepest transformations do not come from outside intervention. They come from inner ignition. That ignition is now stirring within millions. Some call it awakening. Others call it remembrance. Some feel it as a subtle heat rising from the base of the spine. Others as a sudden burst of knowing, or a dream they cannot explain. There is no single form, because the serpent moves in frequencies, not formulas. And yet, it always brings the same message. You are more than you were told. Not metaphorically, literally. You are not a passive observer of the universe. You are an expression of its very intelligence, encoded in human form, capable of tuning into the same vibrational field that ancient sages accessed through chants, breath, and silence. Your DNA is not a dead map. It is a resonant instrument, and the serpent is the one who plays it. So what does it mean to awaken the serpent within? It means reclaiming your role in the cosmic blueprint, not as a victim of fate, but as a co-creator of reality. Not as a consumer of systems, but as a transmitter of truth. It means learning to feel energy again, not just through thought, but through sensation, intuition, presence. It means trusting the subtle, the silent, the symbolic. It means remembering that your body is a temple, your breath a mantra, your spine a ladder that reaches the stars. And yet, awakening is not a destination. It is a spiral. You rise, you pause, you shed. You climb, you slip, you integrate. The serpent does not move in straight lines, neither will your path. But each time you choose to listen instead of fear, to open instead of resist, the serpent rises a little more. Through the root, into the sacral, into the solar plexus, into the heart. And the heart, oh, the heart is where the serpent becomes the dove, where fire becomes light, where instinct becomes intuition, where survival transforms into service. Because awakening the serpent is not about power. It is about purpose. You were never meant to just awaken for yourself. You were meant to become a node in the larger network of rising consciousness, a transmitter of frequency, a reminder to others. The more you rise, the more others feel the pull. This is the true network, not of wires or data, but of awakened beings, quietly remembering together, silently reactivating a pattern older than language. You are part of that pattern, a thread in the ancient weave, a spark in the luminous coil, and the serpent within you, the one who has waited through lifetimes, through silence, through suppression, is ready. It does not ask for belief, only for courage. Courage to feel, courage to surrender, courage to let go of the known and enter the spiral. Because once the serpent awakens, Your life will no longer belong to habit. It will belong to transformation. You will see the world not as fixed, but as vibrating. Not as limited, but as alive. You will begin to speak less from memory and more from resonance. You will walk differently, breathe differently, love differently, not because you've learned something new, but because you've remembered something ancient. And that remembrance is contagious. So now, with everything you've seen, everything you've felt, everything you've begun to remember, the question is not, is the serpent real? The question is, are you ready to rise?